So, having bested the multi-teated chimera last time around, our way forward is now open to us. Just before we get to that, you might have noticed those strange vines growing out of the bookcase in the corner. And before we can continue on, we are going to need to investigate those first.
This one's Mylius, and Lamsbrick, and Michael Mayer, and Cunrus Amphitheatrum Sapientiae Eterni. What a collection of books!
May I ask you something? What are all these?
Ancient books on mysticism and alchemy, ancient science. It's enticing, really. It's all about making gold from lead. It's just a ruse peddled by power-hungry tricksters blinded by greed. But in amongst the trash, there are some valuable works illustrating basic, useful experiments for predicting the laws of nature. Predicting a time when all men will be treated equally. God's will. No room for this argument nowadays.
James.
Hermeticism, Kabbalah, meaningless. Why is it not here?
What?
Where else can it be?
Are you looking for something?
I don't understand. I don't understand.
You don't understand. I don't understand. What are you grumbling about? You're acting really strange. Just cut the charade and tell us what's going on.
I do not like this. We all have our reasons. Let's not delve into each other's personal affairs.
I am not bound to please thee with my answers.
Do all men kill the things they do not love?
Hate any man the thing he would not kill?
And I thought all outlaws read just simple, stupid poets. You read Shakespeare. You're smarter than you look.
That makes two of us.
So with another scathing tete-a-tete out of the way between Edward and James, we didn't end up learning a lot about this mysterious plant. Instead, we got a little bit more information regarding what James was doing here at the monastery. Seems he was expecting to find something amongst all these occult writings and musty tomes. It's just as to what that was, he still is not very forthcoming about. Still, for right now, our main goal is to head off into the next new area, which is going to be right through this hidden passageway here. And that brings us almost adjacent to the main focal point of the monastery, the main chapel. Before we can head off into the main chapel, there are obviously a few upgraded enemies out in this area, such as this dog, which we did manage to run into, I think, in the upper area of the prison. And much like in that area, he doesn't really have much in the way of special tricks or traits or anything like that. He is just pretty much a straight brawler. Thing is, though, that, well, what he does lack in special abilities, he more than excels in his primary trait, which is high strength and very high vitality. In fact, that 602 damage that Edward just took was pretty surprising to me, considering I've really been trying to bump up his vitality. And I can only assume that if that dog managed to get a hold of James, he could probably almost one-shot him. The good thing is that after the fight with the Chimera, we were pretty close to already getting a level, so we can already bump up some of our stats, though you might be a bit confused why I'm primarily bumping up agility here. And I realized in retrospect that I've kind of been ignoring that stat, and that's not really something you want to do, so at least for this level and a couple of the forthcoming levels, we're going to want to keep on pumping up our agility. Don't want to fall behind in turns to our enemy. Also, our choices here are a bit limited as this gate is locked, so without further ado, I guess we're just going to have to press on forward into the chapel. And as you might expect, seeing it as it is the focal point of the monastery, it is pretty grandiose. Though you might think it is falling apart, considering we do find what appears to be a piece of the artwork in the nearby area, but keep in mind that this doesn't really fit with the nearby motif, and in actuality is for something in a different area. Thing is that we can't head into the main area of the church just yet. We have to figure out this tricky mechanism here for the main area. And the good news is that the locking mechanism is right nearby in the stained glass room. As you can probably guess, the stained glass is the locking mechanism itself. It's just, well, this is where the problem comes into it. Now, we had been collecting quite a few pieces of glass over the course of the game, and, well, if you were unlucky, you might have missed one. But I think we've been doing pretty well. It's just, well, we are still one short. And it's not that we have been missing any pieces, it's just the final piece, well, it's going to be in another brand new area that's back in the library. Now, you might recall that clock from before, how it seemed like it's kind of drawing our attention, and that's because it is of importance. It's just first things first, we're going to have to scale up to the top using this nearby box here. And as we make our way all the way to the top, you'll see Koudelka's viewpoint is going up a little bit, and that's because just off camera is a very large relief that seems to be missing a piece. And yeah, you might recall from the previous video with that psychic vision that Koudelka had, it did show the relief opening up. And that's exactly what we just did. And we are greeted with what some might consider to be a very problematic type of puzzle, and that is a music-based puzzle. Yeah, the little tune you heard in the music box there is one we are going to have to figure out, or replicate by pressing these buttons. And if you're a bit tone-deaf like me, it can be a little difficult. But considering you only have 4 options, it's not too difficult to even get down by trial and error. Still, it kind of makes you wonder what they were trying to lock behind such a really complicated mechanism.
What? What is that? Is that just a mummy? Cross your fingers.
That was disappointing.
Holy Savior! The secret of the Fomors from the bottom of the sea! Immigrate!
Did you say immigrate document? What do you know about the immigrate document? Where is it? Answer me!
Immigrate document? Is that what you've been looking for? Hey, you crotchety old fart! I am sick of this. You don't want to talk? Fine. I'll slit your holy throat and leave your body for the rats.
Edward?
I have no choice. Here it is. I'm on instructions direct from the Vatican. There is a manuscript. It's said to be somewhere in the building.
And that manuscript is?
Right. It's called the immigrate document.
Is it very important?
For hundreds of years, it was kept deep inside the Vatican library. No one was allowed to read it. In fact, many people thought it didn't even exist.
That's weird. So why is it here now?
Somebody stole it.
Stolen? From the Vatican?
Right.
No way.
Not many people could steal a thing like that from the Vatican. You really have to know the place, or have enough money. According to our secret investigation, however, the wealthy gentleman who purchased this monastery bribed someone within the Vatican to steal the immigrant document for him.
Wealthy gentleman?
Yes, Patrick Hayworth. My friend.
But it's not like it was priceless art or something. Why would he be interested in a thing like that?
For years, Patrick has dabbled in mysticism and alchemy. He's on the brink of crossing the line, playing God.
Playing God?
Creating life, Edward. It's thought that the ancient druids' forbidden secrets on eternal life and resurrecting the dead are contained in the immigrant document.
I can't believe that.
Of course, it's just silly superstition. That's why I'm here, to try to convince Patrick to drop his dangerous experiments and return the immigrant document to the Vatican.
Wow. You'd never guessed that a lunatic like that was living here by looking at the place.
According to the caretakers, he lives in the building next to the temple.
They said that?
Yes, they're terrified. With all the crazy things going on around here now. They haven't even seen Patrick, yet they feel indebted to him. They've asked me here to see if I can save him.
So that's your story?
I don't know. One more mystery that needs unraveling.
So quite a bit of useful information regarding James's backstory there. Find it especially curious, well, outside of the Vatican intrigue, that James was apparently an acquaintance of the owner of the monastery, Patrick. I guess that explains why maybe the caretakers didn't immediately murder him. Maybe they were known to each other. Also, I do have to question the talking corpse here in the coffin, though I don't think we're going to get much information out of him. He seems to be pretty much dead. No, outside of that final stained glass piece there's really nothing much else in this room, so since we do have the final puzzle piece, I guess it's time we try to open that locked door in the chapel. And something else you might have noticed while we were popping in all the pieces of the stained glass here. Each one of those stained glass pieces does have a unique character on it. And they are not just any unique characters, no, they are Greek letters, which, is going to be the combination for opening up that locked cabinet from the previous video. And while this is completely optional to do, while we are somewhere nearby, we might as well go ahead and open that up. Though if you were expecting a great reward, you might be a tad bit let down. As this very impressive looking cabinet here, well, it's much like that chest that we found down in the prison area. Yeah, inside all we find is a box with happy birthday on it and a bunch of dead flowers. And a whole bunch of letters from someone named Sophia. Now that is not a name that we have heard just yet. And we aren't going to read these letters for right now. That's going to be for a bonus video just because they are pretty lengthy. But these letters are kind of important for a number of reasons. One of them is that they give a very key portion of backstory for one of the characters. Still, that is for the next video. For right now, well, since we have finally opened up the chapel and we've been holding off for that, it's time we go ahead and see what lies in store. I can only assume that even though most of this place has been pretty run down, the chapel has to be pretty grandiose. And I'm sure at some point in the past it might have been truly awe-inspiring with the size and scope that it has, but yeah, for right now it seems that something has just torn this place apart. In fact, the kind of hard to see corpse here in the corner makes me think that there was some massive battle that went on in here. Along with that corpse, though, for the eagle-eyed player, you might also be able to find this shotgun, which is a fairly nice, albeit not as great, ranged weapon as, let's say, the crossbow. Still, it'll be pretty useful in the future. Yeah, outside of that, the chapel here is mostly pretty quiet. Though you might think there is something of concern with that little bit of text there, though nothing decides to attack us. Yeah, the chapel doesn't really have much going on with it, just that weird piece of illumination there at the far end. Though there are still plenty of random encounters you can have inside. For the most part, the enemies aren't really that dangerous in here. You're not going to find any pistol-wielding zombies. Though we do get a rehashing, I suppose, of one of the mid-bosses we fought earlier on. They are now pretty much regulated down to just a normal and not really that threatening type of enemy. We've also seen these two ghostly specters here in the front before, and yeah, they haven't really changed since we last saw them. They just got a bit more strength and a bit more vitality, and that's pretty much it. Overall, it's a pretty easy fight against some mid-range casting type enemies. It's just nice to show off that Koudelka is still doing a tremendous amount of damage, and it does give us plenty of opportunities to continue working up our other elemental magic skills. Also, considering that I don't think I ever really got these specters the opportunity to attack us before, it does give us a quick chance to see just what exactly they can do to us. Now, one of the things they can do is they can lower our stats, specifically the strength stat. Though for some reason they do decide to use that on our not really melee-based characters. And they can also use a frost spell, which, yet again, they make some bad life decisions and decide to use it against our very high piety characters. I guess that kind of all goes back to the mixed bag that is the luck stat. I guess if you purposely just bumped up the vitality and piety of one character that you made sure to have just the lowest luck, you can just have them be the focus of all the attacks. I guess that could be a possible strategy or use for the luck stat. It's a bit hard to say. Also running into a bit of frustration regarding trying to level up Edward's other weapon skills, trying to level up his sword skill, and it's just kind of reminding me how much I miss being able to do multi-hit combos. Still, a fairly easy fight. That does allow both Edward and James to level up. I think I ended up leveling up Koudelka in the one fight I had, going from the library to the chapel. Also, we do get a scimitar, which is a pretty nice sword. But yeah, onwards to that mysterious light at the end of the chapel here. Almost seems like it's emanating from inside that hole. Certainly a very large and imposing plant. almost assume that that might have been what was crawling up through the library. Though that means its roots must be going pretty far. Also, in one of the visions that Koudelka has, I seem to recall a very similar plan. Still, though, with that area down this way blocked, that doesn't really leave much else to the chapel. I guess I could have missed something on the far opposing end here.
What's that bell?
Just the passing of another day. Oh no! Today's All Saints' Day!
The spiritual energy is coming together. What power? It's like a monster.
What's happening? This can't be. No! Koudelka!
So this is definitely not a situation you want to be in. Not only are we facing a boss, we have been separated from the rest of our party, and I can only assume from the way this guy was described, he is a pretty large badass. But considering that he is a flying enemy, I assume that means he is going to be weak to earth, so let's give that a try. That's not good. He is nice enough to give us another turn, so we can try... maybe wind. Yeah, that's a no-go either. This boss is completely unwinnable and our first and only real situation in the game where we have to use our escape ability. Otherwise, if this guy gets a hold of us, he will most likely kill us. Now, that's not the last time that we'll be seeing that guy. It's just, well, we have much larger problems for right now. First of those problems is... we are still very much alone and separated from our party members. And that's kind of why I was also bumping up our agility, just to make sure that we could keep up. Yeah, we are now blocked from re-entering the chapel, and in fact we are in a brand new mysterious area by ourselves, which can usually pose quite a bit of a problem. The good thing is that without armor, we are pretty much set, and also with the leveling up of those other elemental spells, we should have at least Tornado and the Earth magic up to level 2 soon. Which will be pretty good, though, first things first, with this outdoor courtyard area, we do kind of want to get our bearings. This is... I don't want to call it a maze, but it can be a little bit hard to navigate and hard to tell just where exactly you can leave or enter screens and just where that drops you off. I feel that the best thing to do is to try to reach the central area here. You might notice on the map that does seem to be where a door is located. And that is where we are inevitably going to want to head. Just first things first, you might also notice those 4 circles. Those are going to be the key mechanism for opening the door here. Just before we even get to that, well, I do highly recommend doing one more thing before we even get started with it. Yeah, as you might be able to guess from the rushing water here, that does mean that there is a fountain somewhere nearby. And as with most fountains, that is going to be the place where we can refill our health, but even more importantly, it does allow us a place to save. Yeah, it can be especially important that you find this if you've managed to not save in the last couple of hours. I have been editing it out, but at this point we have managed to finally reach the third disc out of the game, and yeah, you might have made the mistake and not saved before you got to the third disc, which in this situation can be a little bit imposing depending on how you've been leveling up Koudelka. If you've just been considering her something of a support character and not being leveling up her vitality or her other very, very useful stats, this can be a very, very difficult situation. It's just I have come very, very prepared and kind of chump out most of these enemies, though they would normally be pretty difficult. I mean, there aren't very many new enemies out here. They're mostly just upgraded versions of enemies we have faced previously. It's just that if you, let's say, haven't managed to work up your agility, they could easily get the chance to probably get 2 or 3 attacks in for every one of your sole attacks. Yeah, with our save point now found, we can start to hopefully unlock that central building there. And if you were wondering just exactly what the 4 circles were supposed to represent on the map, well, our first one is right nearby here off screen. And it is this very lovely female statue. And what we use on these are those mini icon adornments that we've been getting from each one of the bosses over the course of the game. So the game was pretty nice in making sure that there's no way you could get to this point and not be able to solve this puzzle, since I think you could only get the icon items from the bosses themselves. And it never really puts you into a situation where you can drop the item to put you in an unwinnable state. That isn't to say, though, that there won't be times in the future where the game might give us the opportunity to drop something very important, but we'll worry about that bridge once we have to cross it. Right now, though, our next statue is going to be right up here to the west, I'd say. We find ourselves next to Patrick's quarters, which might be pretty interesting. Though first thing is first, I'm going to go ahead and use our adornment here. Also, you might notice there are some very odd runes at the feet of each one of these statues. Might be used for a puzzle in the future, though it might be good to keep those in mind just in case. So yeah, we won't be getting into Patrick's quarters just yet, though the way that is worded, I can only assume that we will be getting in there in the future. But yeah, overall, I do quite enjoy this curveball that the game decides to throw at us. It does lead even more credence to the whole survival horror feel of the game, and can probably put a lot of tension on you the first time you play. I mean, even if someone was just describing this portion of the game where your maybe support character is suddenly just thrown into the lurch by themselves and has to go through a somewhat complicated maze area, well, they would probably find it pretty imposing. The good thing is that I think once you've gone through this area once, and if you decide to play in subsequent playthroughs, you'll actually realize, well, at least this courtyard area is not too difficult to traverse. In fact, I'd say that this is probably one of the more visually atmospheric areas of the game. Also one of the more gorgeous areas with some of its static backdrops. Especially the one where you're just getting a side view of the fountain and you see the much larger central building imposing over the horizon, I suppose. But with these earrings in place, though it doesn't come outright and say it, we now have unlocked the central building by stopping the water, though that does have a secondary repercussion that you might not initially think of. Because just as the water has stopped in the front, that also means that it has stopped in the back. Which means that that save point is now no longer usable to you, so hopefully you made sure to save before you set down that final icon. And while this is no longer a usable save point to us, you might notice there is a little bit of illumination in the water, and if you make sure and check it, you will find an extremely useful accessory. Now, if you recall all the way back to the very first video, in the very first cinematic, while Koudelka was going over the roofs of the monastery, she did manage to lose a necklace. And this is that necklace that she lost so very long ago. In fact, it is a present from a gypsy that she got while she was young. And not only is it something that we need for plot reasons, but it is also a pretty good accessory all around. Now, while it does make our intelligence and piety go down, does almost... well, I think it actually does... well, yeah, it almost doubles our luck, which is not too shabby. And, well, we can now continue forward and hopefully get one step closer to rejoining our party members. Thing is, though, that we've managed to go on out of the frying pan and what feels like deeper into the fire here. Yeah, this blood-stained guillotine room, as you might expect, still pretty populated by enemies. In fact, I think keeping with the overall motif of the place where people get beheaded, we are mostly going to be fighting the undead. Now, we could technically use our cure spell to pretty much wipe the floor with these undead. It's just, yeah, I think I pretty much leveled up our cure spell as much as I'm going to at the moment, so I'm just going to continue, obviously, murdering these poor undead. And while I don't think we've seen this female undead here before, it doesn't really have anything new to it. I think all it does is really do some powerful melee attacks. That is, if we even gave it the opportunity. But yeah, out of all the devastation we've seen so far, this location seems to be a centralized point of almost what I would consider, well, very human-based killing. Seems to be the focal point of a whole lot of murders. In fact, if we go down this ladder here, seems like things are only going to be getting worse.
sunset. Bring our boat, boys. Quickly. Steady. We're in shallow waters. Now, slowly. Lower the anchor. Don't be unreasonable! We can't handle that many passengers! The sky is getting dark! The draft! We're sinking! Bessy! Bessy! The meat is burning! It's burning! No! It's not working! No! Hey! Hey! Where are you going? Where are you going? Hey, you! No! No! We're sinking! Wait! My boat! My boat! My boat!
Are you awake? These ruffians! You harlot! Strumpet! Have you no shame? Oh, if only Elaine had been saved, we wouldn't be in this mess.
Elaine?
Ah, yes. She was merciful. She was benevolent. She believed me, and she was fond of my paintings.
Your paintings? The sun.
It wasn't my fault! All of a sudden, there was a cold ship out of nowhere. It was dark. What could we do? It sank so fast. I was faultless. Elaine. Poor Elaine. If only I'd stayed with her. Hey, you! You! Hey, how's that? Just a lamp? I'll make you just a lamp!
You're crazy!
Shut up!
Honey, let's stop this now. It's time to stop. It's okay. It's over. I'm sorry. My husband, a long time ago, he was the captain of a big pleasure boat. It was a gorgeous boat. He was so proud of it. But then there was the accident. So many people died. Everyone blamed my husband. It was so difficult for him. He started drinking heavily. Silly, isn't it? No matter how much you drink, you can't forget such a tragedy. But he met Elaine. She believed he was innocent. She helped him carry on.
This Elaine, she's dead?
Yes. Why is it that good people seem to die so early? What a waste. While Elaine's husband Patrick was traveling, a robber broke into their house. My husband has always said, if only I had been there for her. We should stop this conversation now. My husband is waiting. He can be so impatient, you know.
And with that woeful tale, we not only find out what led Ogden and Bessy down their murderous path, but also led Patrick down his own path of destruction. And I don't really want to stay in this grim, dark area anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and pick up our brand new weapon here, the rifle RD. And as Koudelka mentioned, something did not feel right with Bessy's body outside of the suicide that just occurred, and in fact, if we check her body further, we will find in her bosom a brand new key. Now, as of yet, I don't think we've seen any mention of a key that or a door that requires a blue key, so we will keep an eye out for that. Just for right now, man, the game got really, really dark. Honestly, I can't really think of any mainstream RPGs that really brought suicide into that much of a focus. Still, while the upstairs is a pretty grisly sight to see, downstairs here is even more so with this very, very large torture device here. And one that seems to have gotten quite a bit of use over the years, or even more recently. In fact, this torture device seems to have a very particular usage or purpose, in that it seems to be necessary for collecting blood here at the end. Even though it might not seem like we have a need for it, we might as well go ahead and take this big bottle of blood here. Seems like it'll just go to waste sitting down here. And in addition to that, there are some rifle bullets, though I think what's even more curious is I think I've seen this door over here before. At least one similar to it. And in fact, if we take a quick look at our map here, we will indeed see that we are pretty much adjacent to the room where we fought the Mad Fly boss down in the lower areas of the dungeon. And while we couldn't really move the door from the other side, could very well be that we could maneuver it and get it out of the way over here.
Koudelka!
Edward,
Koudelka!
over here!
Where are you?
I'm over here!
Oh, thank God. I was so worried. Are you okay? Are you hurt?
No. I'm okay. How about you?
I almost got creamed by that monster. Luckily, I went down the side hallway. Walls caved in. We can't get back to the sanctuary. I figured if you'd escaped from the garden, you'd be here. Thank God I took the underpass.
It's no use. This door won't open.
Damn it! Is there another way out? Aren't you underneath the arbor?
There is. There is another door across from the
The
cathedral.
cathedral, that's right. There's got to be another way out. A secret passage or something.
Secret passage.
Okay, let's split up. Koudelka, start from that door. We'll go along the wall. Find a place to regroup. Clear?
Got it.
Koudelka,
Yeah?
don't get killed.
Same to you.
Well, that at least is some measure of good fortune amongst all this misery and dire straits that we find ourselves in. And as you kind of saw from the map, our journey for the rest of this area is pretty much going to be a straight shot. Which might make it seem like it's just going to be a pretty simple journey. Just it really isn't going to be. In fact, almost immediately we are presented with something of a very obvious hurdle here. The form of a very imposing, albeit goofily named boss enemy known as Gug. Yeah, Gug here is another Lovecraft reference. I think his race is only mentioned offhand in a short story. And he is a pretty visually imposing boss enemy. I mean, not only does he have a pretty imposing array of punches and magic attacks, he has a lot of health. And that would normally be a problem if we didn't already know ahead of time that he was very weak to wind, so that's kind of why I was trying to work up our wind magic. So he did make the mistake of trying to cast a spell on us, so sorry to say, Gug, but you're not really going to be that much of a hurdle to us at this point. I suppose if we hadn't been working up our agility, might have been a problem, or if he even decided to walk close enough to us to maybe punch us. But yeah, enemies just seem to have this constant problem to want to cast magic on us. It's really not the way to go for them. And for our troubles, we do get a level up, and we do get a brand new shotgun, the Shotgun RD, which I think is Rapid Deployment. Oddly, is not a better shotgun than the one we found in the chapel, though I do want to point out the fact that you can actually miss the opportunity to get the shotgun too if you did happen to investigate the plant and then move to the opposing end of the chapel, because that was what would have caused the cinematic to happen. So we are getting quite a few ranged weapons, along with another nice Roman nut. But what really draws the eye in this area is this statue here embedded into the wall. Now, as opposed to the statues on the top side area, this one is completely optional to interact with. But since we do have this bottle of blood, we might as well go ahead and use it. And by doing so, we get access to a very strange little optional area here. And while on its surface it seems pretty ghastly, in reality, this upside down head here is something of a beneficial creature. Because I guess the developers thought that at this point in the game and on, some of the puzzles might have started to get a little bit too difficult for the player. And believe it or not, this is the game's hint system. We can revisit this head as many times as we want, and I think it has about 16 different possible hints it can give us. Though the annoying thing is you do have to enter and exit the room for it to give you a new hint, so I might take screenshots of the hints it gives, but for the most part, they are really not necessary for our journey through the game. Especially considering that we are almost to the end of the underground path here. And we can get some pistol rounds here along, well, we could have gotten pistol rounds where we left Ogden and Bessy's bodies, though, yeah, as you can see, we are full up on those. And we have made our way topside with one small problem. If we check our map, we will see exactly where we are. It's just, you might remember previously that little triangular area there did have a gate and it was locked. And I get the feeling that it is still very much in that state. So, we're going to forego checking that for right now because we do have one little other small area here. And that is a very morose little graveyard on the cliffside. Now, while there are quite a few graves that we could look at, one in particular that we do want to check out is the one in the back. So we do have a small enemy encounter here. Now, I don't believe we have fought these crows just yet, and they are not too much trouble outside of the fact they just have very high agility. And they can actually attack you multiple times in a turn with a melee-based combo attack. It's just, well, as with most flying enemies, the earth-based attack is what they are very weak to. Extremely weak to, in fact. Yeah, I might be making this seem like a bit of a cakewalk or like I am over-leveled at this point, but I really do not think that's the case. I think it's mostly just making sure that you do have a relative understanding of, I guess, how to identify weaknesses or elemental weaknesses when you can. And obviously just making sure that you have not misappropriated your stats. But yeah, this one lone grave here in the back is one of interest to us. Because if we check the name on it, we'll see that it is Charlotte's grave, and though it has been quite a bit of time, back in the second video, we did run into a little girl down in the prison who, while very embittered, still probably could use a little bit of peace, maybe from us praying for her. Outside of this grave, though, the one other one that we want to make sure and investigate is a little bit off camera and something that that upside down ghost, or upside down head, hinted to. Yeah, this much larger grave here is one we're going to have to check, but first, as that upside down head mentioned, we do find a doll, which is the second part to getting that green key that we saw so long ago. And As you might expect from this very large gravestone, this is the patron saint of the monastery. And by praying in front of it, we might get a little bit of assistance.
Oh, repent now! Judgment day is near. The cacophonous sound of 7 bugles will consume the heavens, and all sinners will burn in the fiery wrath of the Lord. No, I will not die. Death knows no boundaries. It is an integral part of each and every life. Death is ultimately an act of grace and love from the Lord. Oh, a blessing, is it not? Oh, Daniel Scotius Erigena, blameless soul. That man has not a heart to be found in his body. Though I do thank him for building the monastery here.
And you are?
Where are my manners? Hello! My name is Raja Bacon. I am a monk from the Franciscan order.
A monk? And I thought you were a mummy.
Yes. You are quite right in your assessment of me. Sun-dried kippers may be more pleasant to look at than my shriveled-up appearance. There was a time when I was hailed as the foremost warlock. But my profession seems to go in and out of fashion with the passage of time. Can't do much about that, can I?
You are a strange man. That's if you can be called a man.
I have given up being a man many hundreds of years ago. I am no longer a person, though I hesitate to answer questions regarding my existence because I have yet to figure out exactly what I am.
That's fine. It's not that I need to know anyway. But tell me, why were you sleeping in such a strange place?
I've never been able to awake in a good mood, and I just planned to rest for a while. What year is it anyway? Are we still on the Gregorian calendar?
Are you trying to fool me, or are you being serious?
Of course I'm being serious. The clock I own was too big for the coffin.
It's 1898.
Lord have mercy. I've been asleep for close to 100 years.
Well, I guess there are some things that still surprise you.
Watch out. When life begins to lack the element of surprise, that's when you are walking down the path to the Lord. Anyway, as a token of my appreciation, I'm going to keep the metal gate unlocked for you. Go through the gate.
Why would you do this for me?
Well, it seems to me that your friends are running amok inside the monastery grounds. They're making so much noise. Would you mind telling them to keep it quiet?
So we get some help from a very unusual source from that cadaver, well, that apparently wasn't as dead as we previously thought. Yeah, Roger Bacon, Master Warlock, is actually a reoccurring character throughout the series, and he plays a much more prominent role in the other games. For right now, well, he's just more or less a mysterious, eccentric cadaver. Though he was nice enough to unlock the gates for us, which means we can hopefully head back to the library without issue, though I'm going to make sure and pick up this Roman nut here. I can only assume, though, that Edward and James did make it safely, as he did mention they were causing quite a bit of a ruckus.
Koudelka.
Edward,
Oh, thank goodness you're okay.
that's not completely the case. I have some bad news for you. I saw the caretakers, both the husband and wife.
Really, where were
They're
they?
dead. Apparently they were the ones responsible for killing all the thieves and desperados that were sneaking into the monastery. And with good reason.
I don't know. I don't believe it.
You should know very well what has been going on. Ogden was trying to avenge the death of Elaine.
Death of Elaine? I don't believe it. This is preposterous.
Who is Elaine?
I have no idea. All I know is Elaine's spirit called me to this place. Tell me, who is Elaine? And Patrick? The caretakers told me that robbers broke into Elaine's home while Patrick was away and murdered her. Elaine was a benefactor for the caretakers. They took it upon themselves to murder every single robber and desperado that entered their grounds. It was a form of revenge for them.
I'm originally from Ireland, you see. Although small, my family had a successful business and was soon able to send me to school, which I loved from a very early age. I was soon accepted to a prestigious university in England, and with my parents' assistance, I made my way across the ocean. I met Patrick at university. We were both studying chemistry and embarking upon similar paths. About that same time, I began competing for the love of a beautiful woman, Elaine, and we had a falling out. I loved Elaine with all my heart. Omnia vincit amor. But love does not conquer all. I soon discovered that I lacked the social status and inheritance money necessary to properly care for someone so well-bred and sheltered as Elaine. I gave up my suit and made way for Patrick. To ease my pain, I joined the church and left the secular world behind. And being the perfectionist I am, the Vatican made me a bishop in charge of some very important matters. But it's been so hard to distance myself from one's emotional attachments. Although I had not seen them for 20 years, I wished them all the best in their life together. And if it hadn't been for this, I wouldn't have thought twice about seeing Patrick again. That's right, Patrick. How can this be? He promised me he was going to take care of Elaine and make her happy. What could have happened?
Being a witness to the gory aftermath. I have a hard time believing the caretakers were acting on revenge alone. Believe me, it was an unimaginably heinous sight. And what about these monsters that keep appearing? No, there's a bigger secret we have yet to uncover. This is the key to Patrick's mansion. Shall we go?
So just a tremendous amount of bad news for James there. Not only does he have to find out that his good friend Patrick has gone down a pretty dark road of evil, but he's also managed to ensnare both Ogden and Bessy into that same dark world, and has inevitably led to their demise. And what's worse, this former lady love, Elaine, is now also deceased, so I think that James doesn't really have that much going for him anymore. But thankfully, I mean, at least we are all now a solid party again, and, well, yeah, Edward did manage to level up, but you might notice that Edward and James weren't really gaining the experience while we were out killing stuff, so more than likely off camera I will be trying to get them back up to level with Koudelka. But for right now, we've got quite a bit of story out of the way. We did quite a bit of journeying, and hopefully you'll join me next time as we continue pressing forward into the darkness that is Koudelka.